3:14 a.m., a rusty Toyota pickup is tearing across a frozen field outside Donetsk at 80 miles per hour, its suspension screaming in protest. Inside, 3 Ukrainian operators are screaming too, because a Russian artillery shell just landed 200 yards behind them. If their truck stalls, they are dead. But if they keep moving, they get to watch the rearview mirror for the most expensive fireworks show in history. This moment began 20 minutes ago with a spool of fiber optic cable and a suicidal plan. 02:54 a.m. The scene was much quieter then. The truck was parked silently under the rotting canopy of an abandoned gas station in the gray zone 6 miles from the target. The target is the ruins of Donetsk International Airport. The Russians have turned its skeletal remains into their most critical logistics hub on the Eastern Front. Inside the reinforced concrete hangars that survived a decade of war, they are hoarding a massive stockpile of Shahed 136 drones. Hundreds of them. Each one packs a 110-pound warhead waiting to be launched at Ukrainian power grids. Inside the airport perimeter, the mood is dangerously relaxed. The Russian Panzer S-1 crews are sipping hot tea feet up on the console. They are confident, arrogant even. And why wouldn't they be? They have deployed the R-330 Zytel electronic warfare system. To any standard radio-controlled drone, this airspace is a black hole. But the Birds of Magyar unit didn't bring radios. They brought a spool of string. The team leader checks the connections in the freezing dark. The fiber optic lines are clear. The Russian radar is spinning lazily blind to the threat sitting just 6 miles away. The setup is perfect. The enemy is complacent, the trap is set, and the Trojan truck is about to upload a virus made of high explosives directly into the Russian logistical network. 2:55 a.m. Under the rusty metal canopy of the hideout, the 3 Ukrainian operators pull their VR goggles down over their eyes. The world outside disappears, replaced by the crisp, static-free digital feed of the drone cameras. Despite the bitter cold of the Ukrainian winter freezing their breath in the air, sweat is beading on their foreheads. The first FPV drone lifts off the truck bed with a soft whine. It doesn't punch the throttle, it creeps. Trailing behind it is a strand of fiber optic cable so thin it is invisible to the naked eye from 5 feet away. This is an umbilical cord of light unspooling from a specialized canister at the rear of the drone. The flight path is a masterclass in nap of the earth flying. The operator keeps the drone below 50 feet, skimming just inches above the frozen weeds and the jagged concrete skeletons of the gray zone. To the Russian electronic warfare operators scanning their screens 6 miles away, the electromagnetic spectrum is perfectly silent. Their R-300 each jammers are blasting noise on every known radio frequency, creating a wall of static that should stop anything flying. But they are jamming ghosts. The control signals for this drone aren't traveling through the air. They are pulsing through the glass cable at the speed of light, completely immune to interference. The drone slips into the ruins of the old airport terminal. It weaves through twisted rebar and collapsed roofing, treating the battlefield wreckage like a devastatingly high-stakes obstacle course. It is a ghost in the machine, moving inexorably toward the unsuspecting Russian garrison, pulling its lethal thread behind it. 02:57 a.m. Inside the Russian Panzer S-1 command vehicle, the relaxed holiday atmosphere evaporates the moment the gravestone radar display lights up. The screen, previously clear, flickers with multiple solid contacts at high altitude. These are the sacrificial pawns, a handful of standard radio-controlled drones released by the Ukrainian team minutes earlier, deliberately broadcasting loud RF signals to act as irresistible bait. The Russian operator wastes no time. Reacting to what he believes is a standard aerial intrusion, he initiates the engagement sequence. The turret of the Panzer S-1 swivels with mechanical violence, and a 57E-6 two-stage missile tears off the launch rail, accelerating to Mach 4 in a heartbeat. High above the airfield, the interceptor meets the lead decoy, turning the cheap plastic airframe into a cloud of burning debris against the night sky. On the ground, the Russian crew exchanges satisfied nods. To them, this confirms their superiority. They believe their electronic jamming forced the Ukrainians to fly high right into their kill zone. It is a classic case of overkill using a $100,000 missile to swat a disposable toy, but it breeds a dangerous confidence. They believe the threat is neutralized. 6 miles away in this cab of the Toyota, the mood is far less celebratory. The team leader watches the distant flash of the explosion reflect off the dirty windshield and tightens his grip on the console. The bait worked, but the cost is high. The Russian air defense network is now fully alert, scanning the sky for blood. The element of total surprise is gone, and the real killers, the fiber optic swarm, are still half a mile out, creeping through a battlefield that has just woken up. "They're awake now," the operator mutters. "The game of stealth has ended. The game of inches has begun." 02:59 a.m. Inside the cabin of the rusty Toyota, the tension shifts from anxiety to a grim professional satisfaction. The team leader watches the Russian electronic warfare activity spike on his spectrum analyzer. The R-330 ZTEL stations are currently flooding the airwaves with enough noise to disconnect every cell phone in Donetsk. Against any standard drone, this would be a death sentence, severing the video link instantly. "Jam away, gentlemen," the operator whispers, his fingers dancing across the control sticks. "Jam until your generators burn out." On his screen, the video feed from the main attack swarm remains crystal clear, untouched by the electronic storm raging outside. The miles of hair-thin glass fiber unspooling from the rear of the drones provide a hardline connection that physics simply cannot hack. While the Russians are busy screaming at the radio spectrum, the Ukrainian swarm is moving in on a private shielded line. But the operators don't rely on technology alone. They rely on geometry. As the fiber optic drones approach the outer perimeter of the airfield, they execute a tactic known as notching. Instead of flying directly at the Panzer radar, they fly perpendicular to its beam. The Russian radar relies on a Doppler filter to separate moving targets from the ground clutter. By keeping their approach angle at 90 degrees relative to the sensor and hugging the broken terrain, the drones effectively trick the multi-million-dollar computer into classifying them as stationary objects, pieces of a wall, or perhaps just debris blowing in the wind. To the automated defense system, they simply do not exist. Silently, the swarm slips past the outer defensive ring. They weave through the twisted rebar of the old terminal building, using the concrete skeleton of the airport as a physical shield. The Russian radar screen remains clear, showing only the fading debris of the decoys. The operator exhales slowly as the lead drone glides through a gap in the hangar doors. They are inside. The Trojan horse has breached the gates and the enemy is still looking at the sky. 03:02 a.m. Just as the Ukrainian operators believe they have achieved total stealth, the mission's greatest strength suddenly transforms into its fatal flaw. A Russian thermal reconnaissance drone patrolling the perimeter of the airfield spots a glint of movement near the hangar entrance. It zooms in. It doesn't just see the attack drone. It sees the thin reflective strand of fiber optic cable trailing behind it like a spider web caught in the moonlight. The Russian commander realizes instantly what is happening. This isn't a radio signal they can jam. It is a physical line, and every line has two ends. "Trace the wire!" the order screams across the Russian tactical network. "Follow it back to the source!" The Russian hunter-killer teams mobilize with terrifying speed. Following the physical trail of the cable across the frozen fields, their reconnaissance drones sprint backward along the flight path, eating up the 6 miles between the airport and the launch site in seconds. The cable leads them straight to the abandoned gas station in the gray zone. Inside the Toyota, the warning receiver screams a proximity alert. "They've spotted the truck!" The driver yells, his hands shaking as he jams the key into the ignition. The operator in the passenger seat sees the threat on his peripheral monitor. A Russian interceptor drone is diving toward their windshield, and the first artillery round whistle overhead. The ground erupts 200 yards behind them, showering the truck with frozen dirt. The shockwave rattles the teeth of the men inside. The situation has shifted from a surgical strike to a desperate survival race. They are no longer hidden ghosts. They are fixed targets. The operator's heart hammers against his ribs like a trapped bird, but he forces his hands to stay steady on the controls. He has to keep the attack drone steady for the final strike, even as the enemy closes in to kill him. The bet has changed. It is no longer just about the mission. It is about who dies first. 03:04 a.m. The Toyota pickup is now bouncing violently across the frozen, rutted earth, the suspension groaning as the driver pushes the engine to the red line. Behind them, the trail of fiber optic cable snaps taut and breaks, but it doesn't matter anymore. The final command has already been buffered into the drone's logic boards. Just as the Russian Tor M2 batteries lock onto the fleeing truck, the Ukrainians flip their final ace face up. A swarm of Gerbera decoys, foam-bodied drones, reverse-engineered from captured Russian tech, suddenly surges upward from the gray zone. They are fitted with radar reflectors and heat emitters designed to scream for attention. The Russian air defense network, already panicked and confused, takes the bait hook, line, and sinker. The missile batteries slew wildly, firing million-dollar interceptors at cheap foam targets, leaving the airspace above the hangars momentarily clear of flak. It is the window the fiber optic swarm needs. Inside the hangar, the lead drone dives. It ignores the frantic small arms fire from the ground troops and slams directly into the stack of Shahed warheads. The shaped charge detonates, not just destroying the crate, but triggering the volatility of the explosives stored inside. Secondary detonation. The entire hangar turns white. The blast is a chain reaction of hundreds of 110-pound warheads going off in a split second. The concrete roof of the airport terminal lifts off its pillars, riding a column of fire that turns the night into day. Inside the cab of the fleeing truck, the shockwave rattles the rear window a few seconds later. The operator rips off his goggles, adrenaline flooding his system as the sky behind them lights up like a second sun. "Jackpot!" he screams over the roar of the engine. A Russian interceptor FPV chasing the truck is caught in the turbulent air of the explosion and slams into the dirt just yards from their rear bumper. The driver drifts the Toyota onto a paved road and kills the headlights, disappearing into the shadows of the Donbass night. As they speed away, the operator looks back at the mushroom cloud rising over the airport and mutters a final goodbye to the hunters who were too slow on the draw. "See ya, suckers!" The final command sent down the fiber optic line before it snapped was a single word of code: dive. Inside the cavernous hangar, the lead drones execute this instruction with robotic perfection. They pitch forward at a steep angle, accelerating through the gaps in the roof structure. There is no hesitation, no searching for targets. The guidance algorithm drives them straight into the heart of the stockpile, impacting the wooden crates stacked floor to ceiling exactly 3 feet apart. The shaped charge warheads do not detonate on contact with the wood. That would be a waste. Instead, they punch through the outer packaging, burying themselves deep inside the cluster of Iranian-designed munitions before the firing circuit closes. This is where the brutal math of demolition takes over. The Ukrainian engineers set the fuses with a 0.8-second delay. This split-second pause allows the warhead to penetrate the casing of the Shaheds before detonating, ensuring the blast energy is directed outward from the center of the stack rather than wasted on the surface. When the detonation finally occurs, it happens inside a confined concrete box. Physics dictates that the shockwave, unable to expand freely into the atmosphere, rebounds off the reinforced walls. This reflection causes the pressure waves to overlap and amplify, effectively doubling the destructive power of the blast. Then comes the chain reaction. Hundreds of Shahed 136 drones, each packed with roughly 110 pounds of high explosives, detonate in sympathetic sequence. We are talking about tens of thousands of pounds of TNT going off in a space designed to park airplanes. The result is a synthetic volcano. The overpressure instantly liquefies the concrete support pillars, and the roof doesn't just collapse, it is launched skyward. Russia inadvertently just hosted the largest, loudest, and most expensive fireworks display in the history of Donetsk, entirely free of charge for the local residents. The immediate aftermath is a scene of absolute erasure. Inside the blast radius, hundreds of Shahed attack drones, stacks of Gerbera decoys, and the specialized launch equipment simply cease to exist. They are not damaged, they are vaporized, turned into a cloud of aluminum dust and burning composite. Outside the crater, the scene is pure chaos. Russian technicians and security troops who survived the initial shockwave are scrambling in the darkness, their command structure shattered. Fire trucks race toward the inferno, their sirens wailing uselessly against a fire burning hot enough to melt chassis steel. They aren't there to save the equipment. There is nothing left to save. They are just trying to hide the magnitude of the disaster from the satellites passing overhead. But a fireball this size doesn't keep secrets. The real devastation isn't the fire. It is the silence that follows. The Donetsk airport hub wasn't just a warehouse. It was the central nervous system for Russia's drone operations on the Eastern Front. With it gone, the consequences ripple out immediately. Intelligence reports confirm that for the next 3 weeks, the number of Shahed attacks on Ukrainian cities drops by 80%. The Shahed Express has effectively been canceled. On the front lines, the impact is even more tactical. Russian artillery units usually dependent on Orlan and Supercam drones stored at that facility find themselves blind. Radio intercepts catch Russian commanders screaming for target coordinates only to be met with static. The psychological toll on the Russian troops is massive. They look at their impenetrable air defense systems and wonder if a rusty Toyota can defeat a Panzer battery, what else can't we stop? The myth of the Iron Dome is shattered, replaced by the paranoia that every civilian truck on the horizon might be a Trojan horse. And so the sun rises over a smoking crater that used to be a strategic asset. The scorecard is humiliating for Moscow. With a 15-year-old pickup truck, a few spools of glass wire, and nerves of steel, Ukraine successfully converted hundreds of millions of dollars of Russian hardware into scrap metal. Then they added insult to injury by pulling a fast and furious escape, disappearing into the mist before the Russians could even figure out who to shoot. The lesson for today is brutal but simple. Never get complacent with your super defenses when your opponent is a Ukrainian engineer with a roll of tape and a sense of humor. They just proved that in modern warfare, ingenuity is the deadliest weapon of all.